really want to talk about markets and globalisation. Economists have spent over 200 years thinking about how markets work. They've concluded that they're not fair, but in general they're effective. You get a sense of this by looking at the growth of the world economy over the last 2 centuries, the globalisation era. And trade, of course, has been a major factor in the transformation. In those 200 years, output per head on the conventional measure has risen about 9 times. Of course, the average material increase does not mean that we're 9 times happier, but there's no doubt that generally individuals are better off because of this 9-fold increase. However, the increase hasn't been shared equally. Output per head in the Western Europe is about 15 times higher. In Africa, the poorest continent, it's about 3 times higher. So that the 9 is spread across different sorts of countries. But not only are Africans better off than they were 200 years ago, today's average African incomes are higher than the Western Europe's one 200 years ago. So basically, if you come from, as I do, a European heritage, the African of today is better off than my great-greats were. And that's been an effect of that great globalisation swing. So one may conclude that as a general rule, globalisation has made even the poor better off. There are numerous caveats to this conclusion. It certainly doesn't mean that every year they're better off. Sometimes they've experienced very long periods of stagnation. For instance, it seems likely that the Chinese incomes were lower in 1960 than they were in 1820. That is, they actually experienced a fall in their incomes over a very long period. So what I conclude is that we should not be trying to stop globalisation. Rather, the aim has to be to harness, to make it fairer, to make it more sustainable, and to restrict the harm that it causes. And that's what the fair trade movement is, I think, trying to do, but particularly by trying to get people to trade more ethically, by trying to include the ethics into the market. There's no ethics in the market. It's effective. Now, what I want to say is, commendable as this is, it's not enough. But I also want to warn you that many of the proposals to improve the fairness of the market or improve the sustainability of the market will blunt the market's effectiveness. So that apparently fairer interventions may not always make the poor better off. And I don't think that's true for the narrow fair trade activities, but I think there's a warning to those with a much wider agenda than just a fair trade. And, you know, material increases by New Zealanders probably doesn't increase our happiness very much at all. We have empirical evidence that. We know it matters a lot, an increase in material increases to the poor of the world. And we've got to be terribly careful that insofar as we pursue our own objectives, we don't actually make the poor worse off. And we could.
All right, Brian, thank you very much.